Well, hello and welcome to today's Q&A. I'm your host and moderator, as always, Tony Vlahos. And seated virtually beside me are Harriette Lowenthal and Mark Brodsky, two esteemed executive coaches, former executive leaders, and experts on senior level executive job search. They are, of course, part of an elite team here at ExecuNet dedicated to working directly with top executives to advance their careers. Ageism in a job search is a real issue. Older workers can face high hurdles in the competition for jobs, often due to tired misconceptions and just plain age discrimination that sadly is pervasive in the employment market. Today, Harriette and Mark will address how you can overcome age bias before a hiring manager, recruiter, or HR professional dismisses your candidacy based on your age. Most important, you will hear what you need to do to stand out from the sea of applicants and be seen as the best person for the role, period. With that brief intro, welcome Harriette and Mark. Good to be seeing you guys today.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Tony.
My pleasure as always to spend time with you. So I did a little research, and according to AARP, over 61% of employees in America over age 45 have seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace. And 38% of people believe it's common to see ageism. Similarly, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, older workers are much more likely to wrestle with prolonged joblessness than younger ones. On average, a 54-year-old job hunter will be unemployed for nearly a year. It's kind of dismal research I've shared. Mark, let's begin with you. What are some of the common myths and stereotypes of executives aged above 50 who are in search?
Yeah, so thank you, Tony, and great to be here, and I appreciate that question. I mean, some of the myths I would begin with is that we need to be on the defensive of our age. That's from the folks looking for opportunities. Whereas when I work with people I coach, we need to be on the offensive. Even though those statistics are dismal, I got goosebumps when you were describing it. I think we should absolutely take unfair advantage of our age. And I think it's normal for folks to be defensive about it, given that. But the myth is that we need to be reacting versus being proactive. And when I'm working with executives, there's some basic things they need to consider. And it goes beyond just tips and techniques for the resume. It begins far before that. So, would hope we have a chance to talk further about those things today.
We certainly will. Harriette, any thoughts on some of the myths that we hear are directed toward older or midlife workers?
Well, when we hear about ageism, if you will, bias against people that are older, it's based upon assumptions and oftentimes stereotypes that are flatly incorrect. And we can talk more specifically, but things like older individuals are set in their ways, they resist change, they're demotivated, they avoid career development programs. And I think that's a way of saying because they think they already know. So less productive, less trainable. The other is, will they take sick leave more so than others? Can we count on them to be healthy enough? And not as open in sharing their knowledge. And of course, we'll get to the technology piece later. Mm-hmm. But those are the common stereotypes that are flat out wrong.
So when you're facing those misconceptions and you're, say, launching your search, Harriette, let's stick with you for a moment, then we'll turn and hear from Mark as well. What do you need to be thinking about, possibly as you're forming your job search strategy, or perhaps a step earlier? If you're an older or midlife worker and you're thinking about making a change, you really need to, how do you begin to form a thought around how to move forward from where you are to where you want to get?
Right. Well, the first thing one needs to know is that, individuals that form in this category are a protected class. There was a law passed in 1967, I believe it was, which is the Age Discrimination Act. And so number one is to know your rights and look out for those subtleties. So things like asking for a photo on, and I'm going to talk about this in two ways. with an application used to be something that people did. And that was one way they sort of screened in and screened out individuals. Now, one could argue in today's world that translates to LinkedIn or ExecuNet or other platforms. So it does say that your profile picture matters. That's one strategy. It's to make sure that you have something that obviously shows who you are now, I should say, but also is very flattering and complements that. Along with that presentation of how you present yourself, is it with future thinking? Is it with ideas that you might bring forward in a blog or commenting on an article? Are you involved in continuous learning? And that can be formal or informal in terms of reading articles, attending webinars, or taking a course if that suits you. But being prepared to talk about the appropriate topics, challenges, and opportunities within the target industry that you're vying for.
Mhm. Mark, do you want to build on what Harriette has said?
Yeah, I do. And I think as one prepares to go out, and there's a concern about ageism, and it's flagrant and often subtle, I'd step back and challenge, and I challenge the folks I work with, to ask themselves 3 basic questions. First of all, why are you looking for your next professional opportunity? Is it because you need to, from a financial standpoint, or is it because you want to? The answer to that question is going to direct, the types of industries and opportunities you're going to pursue and those you're not going to pursue. The second question I would ask is, what's unique and important about you? What's the value you bring? And I would argue that when you get more along in your career, you develop this thing, if you work well and you've had successes and you've blown up some things as well, this thing called judgment. And judgment is the idea that you could anticipate what's going to happen if you go left, right, or straight. And the right opportunity, we'll get into more detail, would value judgment. And the third question to ask yourself, what am I passionate about? What do I want to look for in my next opportunity? And if you've been in the workforce for a while, there's this tendency to want to put up with less noise in the system. And there are things that you really are passionate about. And I could think of one executive I was working with recently who had built, he said, a lot of ugly oil refineries, nothing against oil refineries, but in his career, he's now ready to build some self-sustaining green type, something he'd be proud of that helps the environment. So I think those are the questions that one would lead with as they start their search. Why am I working? Really, what is my special value? And third, what do I really aspire to do in my next position? That will provide the direction.